Covering happenings at the Illinois State House is always fascinating, especially at the beginning of a legislative session where a lot of different things get proposed. And whether or not things advance is a different story altogether. The one piece of legislation we're going to highlight here deals with parents' rights and what could constitute potential child abuse. A controversial topic, no question. And I have reached out to State Representative Stava Murray to get comment to some of the concerns that have been raised about her legislation. But what is the legislation? Let's connect now with Awake Illinois founder Shannon Adcock. She joins us to talk about what this legislation is and their chief concerns about this. So, Shannon, thanks for taking time with us today. Let's go ahead and get you on here. Tell us what this legislation is and why you guys are opposing it.
Good morning, Greg. Thank you for this opportunity. You know, this is getting national attention. House Bill 4876 is absolutely the most radical assault on parental rights that we have seen yet in a piece of legislation. So if you read the bill, and all of the links to the resources I'll mention today, by the way, are at awakeil.com/fight. Basically, this is going to consider it abuse of a child purely when parents exercise their fundamental rights. So this could be, and it's in the bill, if a parent denies the child access to necessary medical care, including, but not limited to, primary care services, abortion services, or gender-affirming services. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, primary medical care means many things. It could mean vaccines. It could mean prescription drugs. Abortion services, those are actually surgeries, traumatic surgeries at that. And if a minor opts for this and you as a parent deny them, that means that you are considered an abuser of a child. So in Illinois, parents who are considered child abusers could lose custody of their children if, in this case, they do not affirm transgender drugs, surgical procedures such as penis and breast removal. This is incredibly radical. And so we have been encouraging citizens of Illinois to send emails through our portal to send their opposition to this. Parents are very, very worried. And so they're already flooding Rep. Stava Murray's emails along with that of the Rules Committee to say, look, our parental rights are fundamental. Government does not grant them to us. Right. And so the fact that she is trying to wage war on parents who have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children is getting national attention.
Shannon, obviously this is early in the legislative session, indication that this is actually going to move because as of right now, it's stuck in the Rules Committee, which is where we all know bills go to die unless it's reassigned somewhere else. So how likely do you think that this is going to possibly advance here in the state of Illinois?
We don't know. We don't know. And so we wanted to put pressure on early before this gets further and further along in the legislative process. And it is an election year. And we are encouraging anyone in the legislature that does stand with parental rights that they actually come out and oppose any bill that would be brought forth of this radical nature and to take a stand with parental rights, to take a stand for children's innocence and ethical care of minors, and to not lean into this radical agenda that you're seeing pushed across the country. California's tried this, Maine has tried this, and they so far have all been well rejected with bipartisan opposition to the war on parental rights. And so I encourage anyone in the legislature to distance themselves from this radical attempt by Rep. Stava Murray and to say, hey, look, we're not going to endorse this assault on parental rights. We believe them to be fundamental as enshrined in the Constitution. So I think that this is just a really good optic moment to say, hey, are you going to side with parents and their fundamental rights? Or are you going to wage war on them? And in an election year, this is going to be a very hot topic. But look, it's been getting national attention from gay rights activists that are testifying against this activism preying on children. And so we're going to be encouraging detransitioners to join us on some live streams and to really share some of the other sides of the story, right, that most people don't hear. All they hear are the myths. And we're certainly intending to dispel many of those going forward.
Shannon Adcock's the founder of Awake Illinois with us talking about House Bill 4876 from State Representative Stava Murray. And no other sponsors right now. She's the only one on the bill, and it's in Rules Committee, so we'll see what happens with this. But what would you say to those who may, say you're being, the buzzword here, transphobic?
Right. And she actually went to my personal Facebook page and to the post that I was providing on her post on Facebook. And she called me a hateful bigot. And unfortunately, she's been reacting very emotionally. She has not been reacting with stats or with data. And so at awakeil.com/fight, we have provided statistics from GenSpect, from organizations that have gay rights activists, that have trans patients that are that are advocating for children's innocence and for parental rights. And so she seems to be a bit emotional with the pushback that she has received. There is nothing hateful about supporting parental rights. There is nothing hateful about wanting to protect children from what Europe canceled with Tavistock, one of their biggest gender clinics. They had to close it because of, quote, failure of care. And so her bill is actually twofold. It's waging war on parental rights, which are fundamental, and it's leaning into this gender affirming care, which is anything but care. It is careless when you're allowing minors to pursue harmful puberty blockers that are irreversible, allowing them to remove their healthy breasts, and calling a parent who objects to that an abuser. Again, this is the most radical piece of legislation we have seen. National advocates are already on board to help all of us here in Illinois fight this. So she has to come from a place right now of understanding the other sides to this story, the failure of care, and to not be calling everyone a hateful bigot. That is absolutely not the case. So I hope that she actually educates herself and turns more towards the statistics and the reality of her bill rather than just using false rhetoric.
And then finally, this legislation, does it also do something with mandated reporters, especially broadening that with these particular issues in mind of what could constitute abuse? Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So if your child goes to a school counselor and says, look, my mom won't let me get puberty blockers, and say she's a 13-year-old girl and she's in the midst of puberty, if the licensed counselor hears that, based on the passage, if this were to pass in the legislature, this parent who objects to puberty blockers for their 13-year-old child could be considered an abuser of children. So that if that person reports this to the state, and the state determines that you are an abusive parent purely for exercising your fundamental rights, that's considered unsafe and abusive, and they can face up to 15 years in prison and fines up to $25,000. Again, this is the most radical assault on parental rights. So yes, a licensed school counselor, a pastor, anyone who would fall into that mandated reporter category, this is incredibly harmful. And there are people that are flooding Rep. Stava Murray's office with calls, with emails, along with that of the Rules Committee, to basically get on record and say, stop this assault on we, the parents. We have a fundamental right to direct the upbringing of our children, whether it's their education or their healthcare or their mental health wellness. And also with this bill, doctors that are performing these procedures against a parent's will would not be sued. So this is a giant beast that we are going to tackle. And I don't believe this is the last time we're going to see a piece of legislation of this nature brought forth if this was to be canceled. This is happening across the country. And so in real time, you're seeing lawsuits that have been brought. And Awake Illinois is certainly on deck to keep this fight going.
Well, again, I've got a request for comment into State Representative Ann Stava Murray's office. We'll see if she does respond, especially to some of these concerns that you've raised and others have raised. So we'll be watching this space closely. Shannon Adcock, Awake Illinois, where can people get more information?
awakeil.com/fight. There's a portal to submit emails. There's some excellent tools and resources for you to educate yourself on the harms of this bill and the realities of this bill.
Appreciate you taking the time this morning, and we'll connect again in the near future, all right?
Thank you.
It is Bishop on Air each and every weekday morning. Appreciate you guys being here, and well, that's it. That's all we've got for today. So have yourself a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.